Okay, hi guys. I'm Abby, and my project is on understanding the impact of the Nova Kakhovka Dam in Ukraine, the destruction of that, using remote sensing. So just a little bit of background, maybe. Does it go? There we go. Okay. A little bit of background. This is the Nova Kakhovka Dam. It is on the Dnieper River in southeast Ukraine. The Dnieper River is a huge river that supplies a lot of water to Ukraine. It kind of, as you can see here, it kind of goes all the way through Ukraine and supplies water in that whole surrounding area. That yellow star there is where the dam is located. It sits at the base of the Kakhovka Reservoir, which holds approximately 18 cubic kilometers of water. So that's about the same as the Great Salt Lake. So it's a pretty big reservoir. And this water is conveyed to the surrounding areas for use as both drinking water and irrigation water. So it's a big source of water in Ukraine and in this Kakhovka region. The dam is about 2 miles long and also provides water to a nearby power plant. So it also produces energy for this region as well. As we know, Ukraine has been the topic of a lot of the news lately. There's a war going on right there, and a lot of infrastructure has been damaged or destroyed, and the Kakhovka Dam is one of those pieces of infrastructure. So on June 6, 2023, an explosion caused severe damage to the center of the dam. So all of that water that was being held back was able to move downstream. This caused a lot of adverse impacts on the surrounding areas. There was almost 60 reported deaths, but the actual number is probably a lot higher due to underreporting. There was flooding of approximately 40 different towns and villages, an estimate of about $6.4 billion in losses. That's including all of the infrastructure, buildings, homes, land, crops, etc. Ecosystem destruction below the dam. There are lots of protected fish habitats, and the ecosystems within the reservoir itself were also lost. As you can see, it was pretty much drained immediately. This is about 15 days after the destruction of the dam, and you can see that the reservoir is pretty much drained. This reservoir provides water to a bunch of canals that then distribute the water across different parts of Ukraine. And within these 15 days, those canals were either, the water supply was either decreased or completely halted, which led to about 700,000 people being impacted by this water loss. So my project objectives were to understand how the destruction of the dam impacted agriculture by looking at NDVI and other vegetation indexes. And I also wanted to explore machine learning methods for assessing the stream and reservoir morphology changes before and after the destruction of the dam. My data sources, I used both Sentinel-2 and Landsat-8 imagery. I used Sentinel-2 imagery for my discrete images because it has a little bit higher resolution, and then Landsat for my other two analyses. My first analysis, I did discrete image NDVI analysis. And so this is kind of my method. I determined my date range of interest, loaded my Sentinel-2 data, created index layers, and then exported the data. So just kind of a look at that. These are images. The first is RGB and the second is NDVI. The top is directly before the destruction of the dam, and the second is right after the destruction of the dam. And as you can see, there's not huge differences in NDVI before and after, a little bit higher before and a little bit lower after. What's really interesting here is you can really see the stream changes. You can see the reservoir start to drain, and you can see the flooding occur downstream. I also wanted to look at how this impacted agriculture, so I decided to take images from the peak vegetation season in 2022 before the dam was destroyed, and in 2023 after the dam was destroyed. So these images are from the very end of June to the beginning of July because I found that that was the peak time for vegetation in Ukraine. And as you can see here, the NDVI for 2022 before the destruction of the dam is pretty high in these center pivots here in this agricultural region, and a lot lower in 2023 after the destruction of the dam. But this doesn't really tell us a lot about how this changes over time. This difference could be due just to the fact that I missed the peak here and I got it here. Or it could be differences in satellite image or in atmospheric conditions. So I really wanted to be able to look at a time series to see how this changes over time. So to do this, I selected 3 center pivots in that agricultural region upstream of the dam. These canals that you can see here are what feeds the irrigation for these center pivots. And so I fully expected to be able to see in the data when the dam was destroyed, because I figured we would see an increase as the growing season progressed. And then when the dam was destroyed, there would be a cutoff of water. We would see NDVI go down. But that's not necessarily what I saw in the data. This is my time series index for my NDVI, NDWI, and GVMI for each of those 3 center pivots. As you can see, this yellow line indicates the time the dam broke. This time series goes from 2019 to 2024. And as you can see, there's kind of a pattern where we increase in NDVI through the growing season and decrease after each year. And that same pattern holds for 2023. There's a little bit of a decrease here, but it goes right back up. And what I learned is that if I go back to this slide, not all of the canals were shut off when the dam was destroyed. They were able to divert water into these 2 canals to keep these fields irrigated, which is kind of cool. So this kind of shows that the impact on the vegetation in that area in terms of agriculture was not very extreme, but it would be very interesting to see what happened in 2024 because that water distribution system has completely changed. So it'll be exciting to see how that changes in the next year. The next analysis I wanted to look at was how to use machine learning to kind of look at the changes in channel and reservoir morphology. For lack of time, I'm not going to go through every step of this, but I'll just show you my results. I decided to use all 3 models in an image before the destruction of the dam and after to hopefully see if we could map those impacts of the flooding as well as the draining of the reservoir. What I found is that my SV model seemed to overpredict water, whereas the other 2 seem to be a little bit more accurate. So if I zoom in on my CART model, it's cool because you can see here before the destruction, the reservoir is full, and then we have this channel that's pretty small and a pretty thick riparian vegetation area. And then after the dam is destroyed, we begin to see this reservoir drain, and we begin to see bare soil peek through there. And this riparian area, we begin to see water in there, so we can see the impacts of the flooding. This would be cool to be able to run a time series in the future to see how that machine learning can be applied to time series data to see how this changes over time. Just to kind of wrap up, I wanted to hit on a couple of the challenges and limitations that I faced. The biggest challenge that I faced with this was the weather patterns during my time period of interest. The time surrounding the destruction of the dam was super cloudy, so a lot of my data was masked and unusable. So it was hard to find images that were not cloudy that represented my time period of interest. Also, my other struggle was I needed higher temporal resolution data because I'm looking at a very specific point in time, and I pretty much have an image a couple days before and a couple days after, but I don't have an image when it was destroyed or like right before or right after. So higher temporal resolution data would have been super helpful. But overall, I kind of learned that these impacts can be shown through NDVI analysis and machine learning, which is kind of interesting. So these are my references. And are there any questions? Oh, sorry.